Elizabeth Short, born July 29th, 1924, in Hyde Park in Boston, was the middle child of 5 daughters, born to Cleo and Phoebe Mae. Her father's car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge. Everyone thought he committed suicide, leaving Phoebe to raise her 5 daughters alone until Elizabeth and her mother saw her father on a street in Medford, Massachusetts one day. After the shock of seeing a dad that was supposed to be dead, she later wrote him requesting to live with him in California. She wanted to take care of him. That decision would trigger a chain of events that would end up with her dead, her body cut in half and posed provocatively in a field down the street from a middle-class neighborhood. Her beauty, the mystery surrounding her, the media frenzy, and the brutality captured the attention of America and still has our attention over 50 years later. Her case is still unsolved. This is the case of the Black Dahlia, and this is Outline of a Murder. Okay, we are live. You don't look enthused.
Well, I'm just waiting for you to finish the intro.
We're live with our mini-series that has turned into a major series at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing historical cases, and this episode is on Elizabeth Short. Which is? The Black Dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it would be fun to have like drinks that they drank back then, right?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
And so I made my first ever
Cocktail.
Because in the Black Dahlia time, the Manhattan was the most popular drink there was. Okay?
Right.
But you're a wimp when it comes to stuff like that.
Not really, but I drink wine.
Sweet wine.
Right.
The ants won't drink.
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're not going to have you
that the ants wouldn't drink?
Yes. So I want you to take your first sip, okay?
Okay.
And we start it for 30 seconds. He counted because that's what you're supposed to do. Nope. Okay, I'm ready.
Can I go now?
You know what? I'm going to try too.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
This is the Manhattan, guys.
All right. That was good, Sherry. My throat's burning. Stop.
I may have to redo the intro. Actually, it's not bad.
Really? Come have a taste.
I like it.
Come on, Mike. Tell me it's not bad. My throat is burning. No lie.
No, it's tough.
No wonder it was popular. I bet you could get a gallon a sack anytime with these drinks.
What?
Come on, try it.
That ain't bad at all, is it? Oh, I was crying. Oh, my goodness. That's funny for our very first episode.
Here, Mike. Have a drink. You can have it. He liked it.
Oh, I forgot to bring my water. Does she have water in here? We might need some.
That's so bad, isn't it? I'll eat the cherry, though.
You know what? It would be better. To me, it would be better on ice.
Yeah.
It needs to be cold.
Yeah. That's actually not bad at all. Okay. All right. So, my esophagus is burning. My eyes are watering because that was pretty stout, huh?
It was stout. I don't know how they could even drink these.
Thank you. Me neither. Oh, I'm fine.
Maybe they didn't have a lot of alcohol back then.
Nope. I think they did. But this case, okay, so I got to, tell everybody. Well, first of all, Mom is here with me. My sister, Elena, will join us next season. And so what we do with these is each, March is when they're going to drop, right? We like to have a mini series. And so last year we did Family Annihilators.
Yes.
And then we really wanted to do some historical cases. And I'm excited about this. We've got the Black Dahlia, which we're going to start with.
I think these cases are my favorite.
Yeah.
Not the murders, of course. But
Right.
Because they have to really investigate.
Yes.
There's no DNA. There's no phones. There's no tracking anything. They have to really investigate them.
Yeah.
And I think they did back then.
Yeah, they did. And I just have to say, like we've got H.H. Holmes coming up. We've got Jack the Ripper. We've got the London Nude. I had never heard of him until I started investigating Jack the Ripper, actually, and I came across, they call him Jack the Stripper.
Uh-huh.
We're going to do the Lipstick Killer. So there's a lot of good. We have 7 cases completely. But on this one, the Black Dahlia, it is a rabbit hole.
It is. How far back are we going?
Well,
Which
this
is interesting. I mean,
we're going
all
back
the
to
way
1590.
Yeah, that's going to be
So,
interesting.
like,
1590.
Yeah, Catherine of Batory.
Isn't that crazy?
No, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, Elizabeth of Batory. And she's supposedly the most prolific serial killer that there is. But what I thought was interesting when I started researching these cases is how they're actually tied together. So we're going to dive into the Black Dahlia first, and I literally do not know how many parts it's going to be because, like I said, it was a tough one to research because there's so much information out there, but nothing that is really pertinent to who the killer is.
Right.
That's what. There's no DNA. There's no fingerprints. There's nothing to tie the killer. So this is actually one of the cases that I do not think will ever be solved.
You don't?
No.
It is fascinating, though.
And not only
But
that, but the person's probably dead by now.
I was going to say, back when that happened, the people are probably dead.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody probably knows.
Yeah.
I mean,
But if we do like a part 2, part 3,
Right.
I'm going to give my ideas on who. Like, I uncovered a suspect I had not heard of before. And I know people that maybe follow the Black Dahlia, because there's a really good website.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, several.
a lot of good books, too.
There are. And what might, people that have followed this more closely might know of this suspect, but I had never heard of him. And so I'm excited. So that'll probably be at the end.
I'll have to wait and see, because these cases that she puts together, I only know basics on some of them. So it's all new to me, too.
Yeah.
As the listeners learn it, I do.
Mm-hmm. The year of the block, that Manhattan already, of the Black Dahlia is 1947.
Wow.
And again, this episode is going to be very interesting because of all the twists and the turns, okay?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, and people might think I'm a terrible person by saying this, but one thing that shocked me when I was researching this case, I really found myself not liking Elizabeth Short.
Me too.
It's
maybe
terrible.
Not her, just the way she lived.
Yes,
and
and I'm not saying
used.
she did not deserve to be killed.
No. But she did manipulate
Yes, and
people in her life, and men, family.
But she's a paradox because you have where, she, like people, I mean, they've said everything from the fact that, she was a prostitute. No, she wasn't.
No.
She was not a prostitute. Other people say she was a loose woman. No, she wasn't. But she lied a lot of the times for no reason. Like she did not need to lie, and she would just lie. And
Didn't it cost her some relationships by doing that?
It did.
I think I read that somewhere.
Well, and not only that, but that's I am triggered by lying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. It'll really make me angry. And so I think that's probably part of why I'm having a rough time with the victim in this, because it shocked me. I didn't realize she did live off of people. And it did feel like maybe there was some manipulation at times. But you know what helped me is I remembered she was young.
Right.
She was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I was researching, I'm like, man, I don't like this person. Like, I don't like how she lived or anything like that. But then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I was much worse when I was her age.
Right.
Well, I didn't
It comes with being young.
It does. It does.
Different behaviors, not the same maybe, but different.
Well,
but she didn't deserve what she got for
but
sure.
you know what was interesting to me is that her lifestyle and how she was living put her in danger.
It did.
And what fascinated me even more is it put her in danger back in 1947. I mean, it's not like, the 80s, 70s to 80s, the golden age of serial killers. I mean, it seems like that was a more innocent
40s,
time back then.
I agree.
And so
But now doing these cases and listening to podcasts, no
era was ever without danger.
Safe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Maybe
what I'm
they didn't
finding.
have as many.
I don't know.
But I don't know either, or that wasn't talked about or reported. But yeah, I don't think any era was safe.
Yeah, I don't either. And the time frame is very interesting because back then is when the film noir, is that how you say it, came out? The dark, themed films.
Right.
Because I guess back then with World War II, there was a lot of pessimism. There was a lot of questioning of life, and movies and things got really dark and stark back then.
Well, look at your dad. Vietnam, they questioned that too almost every...
I mean, Vietnam was like 20 years later.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Different eras, different
Yeah.
situations. You question different centuries, different... I mean, you just question.
Yeah. So it was an interesting thing, and that's where her name came from, actually. There was a movie called The Blue Dahlia, and we'll get to that, but they called her the Black Dahlia because of her black hair.
She did have black hair.
She did, and piercing blue eyes.
She's pretty.
Her eyes were gorgeous. Okay, so now, I've watched true crime, and, for years and years and years, I've read true crime books, and she was actually the first victim that ever annoyed me. So I just thought, full confession, I would get that out there. But then, when I realized she was 23, that's very, very young. She lived a high-risk transient lifestyle, sleeping on couches, spare bedrooms, sharing hotels or apartments with people that she barely knew.
Right.
Sometimes complete strangers.
But didn't she also, every now and then, she'd work for short periods of time?
Very, very short period of time. Yeah. She did date a lot of guys, especially GIs, but she wasn't loose. And that's what people need to understand. She was not a girl that just slept with everybody that she came into contact with. She was actually pretty, maybe small town would be a good word, or...
Do you know about her parents?
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit.
Okay, like that? Okay.
Well, no, yeah, actually, yes. Now, what's weird is she would sometimes say that she was sleeping with people that she wasn't sleeping with, and then other times she would claim to be a virgin. So I'm not sure what she was, but from the research, she did not sleep around, okay? She did have a rough childhood, which we'll get into, and then we'll go into the discovery of the body, the autopsy, etc. This murder is extremely violent and sadistic. It was to destroy her beauty. It was to destroy, she was shamed.
Also.
She was shamed on how she was posed, and what was done to her. She was tortured before she died. They know that. And if you've got any kiddos, you probably do not want them hearing this podcast because we're going to get into some of the autopsies and things like that. I also discovered that they have some of the original documents on the FBI's website.
Oh, yeah. I heard that on
There's
one
a
of the
lot.
podcasts that you could look up a lot, and
I
she
did.
was on there.
I did, and it was interesting. I didn't finish because it was overwhelming. I've actually got them downloaded, but what was interesting is you could see how they were trailing different suspects and trying to get her identified and trying to get fingerprints and all that stuff. It was really fascinating to get inside the process. And so I recommend, if this is like your case, I would definitely go and check all of that information out. It'll take you a while, but it was fascinating. So Elizabeth Short was born July 29th, 1924 in the Hyde Park section of Boston. And she was the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo and Phoebe, or Phoebe, F-O-E-B-E. Is that Phoebe or Phoebe?
I would say Phoebe, but...
yeah, it sounds like Phoebe.
Forgive us if we pronounced it wrong.
Phoebe Mae. Her father briefly moved the family to Portland, Maine, and then they settled in Medford, Massachusetts, and that's where she grew up.
What's interesting, is he military? Because she liked military men.
I mean, he might have been in World War I, because I think they had the draft, didn't they?
Yeah, but I wonder if they moved a lot.
No,
for the military.
actually, it sounds like he was an unstable person.
Oh.
Yeah. Her dad built miniature golf courses, but then he lost all of his money in the 1929 stock market crash.
Oh, yeah.
And what's crazy is, he disappeared. His car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge, and so many believe that he committed suicide.
Sounds like it to me.
And for many, many years, that's what they thought.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Phoebe, she began working as a bookkeeper, to support her family, and she raised all of her daughters during the Great Depression.
By herself.
Mm-hmm. That's a strong woman.
Yeah, it is.
And she was, besides just being an amazing single mom, she was described as a very caring woman. And then Elizabeth, she was liked in school, so definitely had lots of friends. But they say that she was starstruck and she moved to LA to be in movies, but there is no evidence of that at all, that she was going to be in movies. Yes, but there's, I kept looking for where she was trying out for roles and stuff. She never did. And what actually got her in California, I believe, was a guy.
Did she model?
Mm-mm. No. But the reason they said she was starstruck is her schoolmates called her Medford High's Deanna Durbin, a popular film actress and singer. So in her autograph book, which I didn't even know what that was, so I had to look it up, but there were 10 references to that nickname. So an autograph book is a book for collecting the autographs of others, and traditionally they were exchanged among friends, colleagues, and classmates to fill with poems, drawings, personal messages, small pieces of verse, and other mementos. Their modern, examples would be yearbooks today, friendship books, and guest books. But I guess they were popular among university students from the 15th century to the 19th century, and then they weren't as popular anymore.
Well, sort of like a journal, but autograph books when I was growing up is when you would meet your favorite star or someone famous or someone you thought a lot of, and they'd sign something in your book.
No, this right here is an example of an autograph book.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that neat? And
sort of like a journal, a little diary.
And I think, doesn't that say 1898?
I can't see.
I think it does. Yeah, 1898.
1898.
So I guess that's what, that was a thing, kind of like friendship bracelets were when I was a kid. So yeah, you would just have this book, and people would sign it and write little things in there. Isn't that neat? Yeah, your friend and schoolmate. I think that's really cool.
That's cool.
So that's an autograph book. Had no idea.
Me either.
Now, one passage in it said, "To a friend worth having in Medford High's Deanna Durbin." Another said, "To the sweetest and cutest double of Deanna Durbin." So many considered her the prettiest of the sisters, and she was striking. Dark hair with really light blue eyes.
What does that say at the top of that autograph book or diary?
I can't.
Can you see that?
Mm-mm. No. But you can see, so this obviously is Elizabeth Short, and that's Deanna Durbin.
There's a little similarity.
There's a little bit. But I
in
think
high school, she might have looked more like her.
Well, she's not much older in this one, though.
Oh,
yeah. But I thought it was interesting how they both posed their eyes the same for the pictures. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think she necessarily looks like Deanna Durbin, but definitely, a little bit close. Like you could see the
because of her hair.
Similarities. Mm-hmm. Well, and their eyes, the way they're looking, maybe. But
and her eyebrows, yeah.
So again, she was like the prettiest, of all the sisters. She had pale white skin, which was a thing back then, right? Mm-hmm. And then she had her eyes are piercing. So from these autographs, you can tell that she was well liked as described. Her mother said that she was, quote, a very affectionate, sweet girl. And if she was out at night, she always stopped in my bedroom to talk. And she would talk and talk until everything she had done, and everything is what her mother wrote or said in an interview. And then also she wrote her mom every single week.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
So she was close to her mother.
Yeah. So whenever she was away from home, she would write her. And now she had bronchitis a lot as a kid. So that produced like severe asthma attacks. And she had to have lung surgery when she was 15. So I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
And then doctors, they wanted to get her in a milder climate because you can imagine Massachusetts would have tremendous cold and storms, and dry air.
Have inhalers back then?
I don't know.
I wouldn't think so, huh?
I don't know.
In the 40s.
And so they moved her to, basically in the winter, they moved her to Miami, Florida for the next 3 years. So she'd live there during the winter. And then she dropped out of Medford High School in her sophomore year.
Oh, young.
Yeah, she was very young. So what, at maybe 16?
16.
Unless having surgeries, she might have been an older student if she missed school.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too, because she's probably out. And I imagine surgeries aren't like they are now.
Right. So I'm not sure, what the recovery time was, if they did in the summer, so she didn't have to miss school. So, I mean, we could guess she'd probably be about 15, 16, maybe 17. Now, I hope this part of the story is correct because I did a lot of digging, and now we're going to, fast forward to LA, okay? And this is where obviously her body was discovered. And sometime in 1942, because things get murky, that's why I'm not sure that I have my facts straight. She did like to be called Beth, by the way, for short. So I might go ahead and just switch it up and call her Beth because she liked that. But her mother, Phoebe, saw her father, Cleo Short, on the street in Medford, Massachusetts.
So it was faked his own death.
Yes, he abandoned his family.
Wow.
I forgot. The man that got her to LA was her dad. Yeah, I forgot about that.
What?
Yeah. So, okay, what happened was they're on the street. They see, she sees, obviously, her husband that's supposed to be dead.
What are the chances of that?
Right. And
how many more years later?
I'm not sure. This is 1942. So let's see. She was born in 24.
And he left how long
So she would have been 18. I don't know when he left. I just know she was little.
Oh, my.
And so Beth briefly spoke with him and then later wrote him and told him that she wanted to visit and care for him where he now lived in Vallejo, California. So it sounds like he was just there for some reason in Medford, and then they see him, but he's actually living in California.
That's crazy. Out of the blue.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. And then other stories say that Phoebe actually received a letter from him in late 1942 where Cleo was apologizing, stating that he was alive and he lived in California.
Now that seems more likely, but anything could happen.
Yeah. And again, that's where it gets murky because I don't know. But I do know that she did contact him to live with him. And when I write these, I sometimes forget some of the details. You asked how old she was. It appears that she was 6 when he left.
Wow.
So he sent her $200, and she arrived in December of 1942. She stayed with him and a lady named Mrs. Yankee, who was living with him at the time. I don't know what her first name was. The three moved to 1028.5 West 36th Street in L.A. later, and then 3 weeks after that, Beth let Mrs. Monty, a neighbor in the rear house, know that she was going to Camp Cook to work in the post exchange. And she even wrote her mother that she was working there. There are reports that her father was a drinker, and they argued a lot. And so that's why she wanted to move out.
Was she working there?
She might have lasted a day, if that. I'm pretty sure it's in my notes.
Yeah, because the books I read, she didn't last long at a
No,
job. She
at
just would
any
quit.
job. Yeah. But, I mean, if you think about it, maybe the reason she was so unstable when it comes to her living arrangements and holding down a job is, I mean, a dad dying when you're young is really earth-shattering. And then to find out he's alive, I cannot imagine how that would feel. Like the betrayal, the rejection.
Self-esteem would be low.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would be devastating to me to find out my dad, basically, I would interpret that as he hated his family and he
Right.
left us.
And then you meet him and he's not what you thought he would be.
Yeah.
A drinker, and
Yeah.
they fought all the time.
So
That's sort of sad.
it is sad. And I had never heard the details of her life
I
because,
didn't either.
you know, the psychology of why people make certain decisions always fascinates me. And I deal with that a lot, you know, with mentoring and stuff in
Right.
my business. That's what I do. And I can see why she was so unstable. You know what? It really, like, her story is like she was trying to find someone to love her, quite frankly.
Do
That's,
you think she was unstable, though?
well, just
I
the
don't think
fact
she
that
was
she.
unstable, I think.
Well, I don't mean unstable mentally.
Oh, okay.
I just mean
Okay.
unstable as far as not keeping a job, you
Oh,
know,
yeah. Yeah,
earning
yeah.
her own money and getting her own place and
Not
building a
independent,
life. Yeah,
right.
like it wasn't like she was trying to build a life. It actually looks like she was trying to find someone to love her and marry her.
Right.
Is what it, you know, and not saying that's bad, but I
That
think
was her focus.
yeah, and your dad leaving you when you were young, I could see how you would want someone to love you. Now, Beth arrived January 29th, 1943, and got the job. Her manager, Inez Keeling, said, quote, "I was won over all at once by her almost childlike charm and beauty. She was one of the loveliest girls I have ever seen and the most shy."
Oh,
I thought
she
it was interesting.
shy.
Mm-hmm. She only worked there a couple weeks before taking off. She was chosen as a camp cutie before she left.
Aw.
Yeah, she was a sweetheart. She was a sweetheart who lied, but again, she was young.
She was young.
And it's just important to know, you know, we all have triggers and things that really irritate us. And again, lying's one of
Lying
those.
is one of them, yeah.
After she left, she lived in several towns briefly. A 12-year-old Paul Veglia remembers seeing her every day for 2 months at his dad's hotel. It's the hitching post in Cosmalia. Do you know where that is?
No.
Because you're from California.
No idea,
Okay.
yeah, but I have never heard of that before.
So that was where she was in the summer of 1943. So she gets the job, what we said in January. January 29th is when she arrived. And then she was gone 2 weeks later. And then she would move, you know, to several towns briefly. And then she ended up at the hitching post in the summer of 43. And she stayed in a cabin near the hotel. And she would also go to the hotel bar. But a lot of people said she did not drink when she was at the
I'd
bar.
heard she did. But she didn't.
I don't know if she later did, but
Oh,
at this
okay.
point,
At
she's
that
not
point.
drinking. But I heard both. So again, that's why it's so
There's so
hard.
many stories about her.
Yeah, and a lot of them are not true.
No, they're not. And as the years go on, they add things.
Yes.
You know, when you're writing a book,
Yep.
you don't know.
Yeah. Let's see. She would order sodas, and then she also lived in Lompoc and Santa Barbara. So I'm not sure where Lompoc is.
I know where Santa Barbara,
Me
of
too.
course, but not
But it was in Santa Barbara that she was arrested.
for.
So this was September 23rd, 1943. And again, here's the paradox, because many of her friends said she didn't drink, but the arrest was for drinking in a local bar while underage. So she was either not drinking and got arrested for being in the bar, or she was drinking and got arrested. I don't know. What I do know is the arresting officer, Mary Unkefer, I think is how you say it, or Unkefer. She befriended Beth and allowed her to stay at her home for 9 days while juvenile authorities, before they sent her back home to Medford. So at this point, she has to be, what, 17?
She has to be.
Yeah.
Or at least
well,
17 or 18. At least.
because drinking was, you had to probably be 21 even back
Probably,
then.
yep.
I know it was lowered to 18 when Dad was young, and then too many teenagers were getting killed in car wrecks and stuff, so they put it back up to 21.
I'd say back then at least 21.
So
right?
she might have been 17 if she was considered a juvenile and she was being sent back home.
Oh, yeah, juvenile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
bet she was maybe, God,
Unless-
was she younger than I thought when she was murdered? Okay, so that was 1943.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Well, instead of going to Medford, she went to Florida and visited her family there. Because I guess, you know, she would go down there and then she'd go back home and visit occasionally, but she did not go back to her
I
mom.
guess they just gave her a bus ticket. I've
Probably.
heard that before in a lot of
Probably.
shows and stuff. They give them a bus ticket
And some don't even
to go home.
Yeah.
And some don't even
Get on the bus.
get on the bus.
Okay. Officer Mary said that she was very good looking with beautiful dark hair and fair skin. She dressed nicely and was a long way from being a barfly. She also described a tattoo that Beth had of a rose on her left leg that she loved to sit so that it would show, which, I mean, having a tattoo back then.
In the 40s, that's sort of unusual.
Right. I mean,
Wonder
that's
when
a big
she
deal.
got that.
I don't know, but I'm sure it was scandalous.
It had to have been because,
Did I ever tell you my tattoo story?
no.
Okay.
But I was with you.
No, you weren't with us. We were here, but you weren't with us at the tattoo
I went
parlor.
with you at Sparrows.
You were there? I don't
Yeah.
remember you there.
Yeah, I was there.
Did I block it out?
You might have. It's
Okay.
when he walked out to
Get high?
have a smoke.
Yeah, he's dead now.
Well, that's not why he's dead, but
Right. It was, yeah.
yeah.
And we didn't kill
I
him either.
remember that. No.
But I wanted the butterfly, right? But I was in my 30s, and Dad was like, no tattoos ever, right? I was so nervous he was going to see it. So for like weeks, I wore pants where he couldn't see it because it's on my ankle. And I'm like, you're
in her 30s.
Yeah, you're being a child, Sherry. You know, like you're being a child. You need to be bold, and you just let Dad see that tattoo.
Okay.
Nope. Mm-mm. So anyway, finally I was like, you know what? This is dumb. It's summer. I'm hot. I'm not. So I go over there, and I, was sitting there. He goes, "What's that thing on your ankle?" Oh, it was like I was, a teenager. I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna get in so much trouble. He's gonna ground me." Anyway, I said, "What thing?"
What thing?
And so he came over and he looked at it. He said, "Well, that's nice looking, Lidlin. I like that." I'm like, "Oh, yes. Thank you."
When you think people won't react like you assume they will, it's
Well,
always
and
complete
here's what I
opposite.
think, because when you have parents, you always think you're going to get in trouble for
Right.
stuff, right? And he probably only told me that because I was a teenager.
To scare you.
Yeah. And now that I'm an adult, which I forgot,
Yeah.
then, but my tattoo still looks good.
It does.
Elena's. But the other thing is I had to pretend that it didn't hurt because I went first.
That's the worst thing.
Yes.
Is where you have
And
it
when
on
it
your
goes on the
ankle.
bone, that is not pleasant.
Now, why do you have to pretend?
Because I
'Cause Elena was
knew
there?
that if I showed that it hurt at all, she was going to back out on me. That's what I was afraid of. So I had to poke her face. And she's like, "Does it hurt?"
Oh,
And on
my.
the inside,
Good
I'm
actress.
crying. I'm screaming, And
I wondered why you were sitting there because I had always hurt on the ankle. I don't have
oh,
one.
yeah.
The
No,
ankle is
actually, the only
horrible.
part that hurt was where the bone is on the ankle. Other than that, it was not that bad. It's like a cat scratch. But hers was on her spine.
Yeah, yeah.
That hurt really
and
bad.
it was a big one.
Yep.
It wasn't as small as yours.
Yep. But I did a good job, didn't I? You had no idea, did you? Yep, I was dying. Anyway, okay. So she's in Florida, and she meets a Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., a decorated Army Air Force officer of the 2nd Air Commando Group. He was training for deployment to the Southeast Asian theater of World War II. Beth later told friends that he had written a marriage proposal to her as he was recovering from a plane crash in India.
How long had he known her?
I don't know. So we know that she went back to Florida in 43.
43.
And then she said that she accepted, but he died in a second crash on August 10th, 1945. So this is 2 years from when she had to go back home. The war only had a week left.
Oh, no.
But here's the thing. She lied all the time.
So close.
Okay? So, to some people, she said that he was her husband, and he wasn't. She even carried a newspaper clipping of his death, claiming to be his widow.
Really?
Yeah, and I can't verify that they were ever engaged. So I don't know if that was another lie. I mean, seriously, guys, when you look at how much she lied, it's shocking.
Well, didn't the love letter say that he had asked her?
I've not found any evidence of any marriage
that there was a
proposal or love letter. Now, there might be. I could be wrong. But we do know she did lie about being his widow because they were never married. So that part's a fact.
Wow.
Then,
That's a pretty big lie.
And then something strange happened in Florida. It's like one of those weird things that you're not even sure it's part of the case. It's just really, and I don't even know if it's related, but she received a telegram from Washington, D.C. that said, quote, "A promise is a promise to a person of the world."
What does that mean?
I don't know. And
Who
she
is it
never,
from?
I don't know. And so, again, it may not even be related, but it's weird.
I wonder why she wanted to get married and dated so many men because of her dad.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what I think.
It's sort of how you enjoying that drink, that Manhattan. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Forgot how strong it is.
Have you ever had a cocktail before?
No. This is my first. You're here for my first cocktail and probably my last.
And she's in her 40s.
Actually, it
No
won't be the
cocktail?
last because we're going to have like several over. Not Manhattan. So actually, that is not bad. I mean,
it is.
No, it's not. I
It
don't
is.
like strong alcohol taste, but that's really not bad at all. I'm
That's
surprised.
very strong.
It is
alcohol
strong. Yeah.
taste. Yeah.
Well, and if I would have had a more expensive whiskey, it would have been better. Okay. But I didn't want to spend $146.
Right.
Now, so that was a weird deal. And then we've got records of her, like her trunk. You know how they would use trunks
Right.
back then? That was dated June 1st, 1946, that shows that she stayed in Indianapolis and Chicago before she went back to California.
So
Okay.
in between 43 to 46, what happened between then?
So she was in Florida, and then she was also in Indianapolis and Chicago, and then she would sometimes go see her family in Medford.
But no reports of a gentleman or a
I don't know. I don't
job,
know.
because that's
It
3 years.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there was. But
Okay.
here's where, and this is going to be for this mini series or our mid series. Okay, when she was in Chicago, she became very interested in the Susan Degnan murder. We're going to get into that because that is William Hirons. That's the lipstick killer case.
Oh. See,
So-
I hadn't heard of that case
Yeah,
before.
they all intertwine. It's very interesting.
Oh.
And so William Hirons was accused of killing the young girl. She was maybe like 6 to 8, I think, which we'll get into.
No.
She was dismembered, and he literally served the entire time in prison for that murder and 2 other murders, and I don't think he did none of them.
None of them?
I don't even think they were the same killer. I think the first 2 were, but the little girl was completely separate. But we'll break that down. But Beth had a friend in Chicago at the time. His name was Freddie Woods. He was 23, and he said that she was, quote, fascinated with the death of Suzanne and told Woods that she was a reporter covering the trial. Again, why?
To get him or be
I don't know. I mean, it just...
more to impress him, or wonder what fascinated her about the trial.
I'm not
Curiosity,
sure.
or because
It could be because, I mean, we're obviously,
Right.
we have a true crime
Right,
podcast,
right.
So we can,
that's true.
to me, I think the psychology is what's fascinating to me.
It
But
is.
why did she lie so much already, like in her young life? And
Well,
this
she
is just the tip
probably
of the
didn't
iceberg.
Think very highly of herself, and that's the only way to make herself feel important.
Could be.
Maybe.
Could be. Now, in July 1946, okay, so now we're 4 years later, Beth arrived back in L.A. to visit Army Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, whom she had met in Florida. Now, some reports say that he was her boyfriend, and she lived with him in Long Beach and in Hollywood. During this time with Fickling, Elizabeth was, quote, radiant and telling everyone she's going to marry an Army officer.
Is he the one? There was one that she dated that they didn't have any kind of relationship at all.
He might be one. There's one where, again, it was a lie. The
But she was in
relationship
love
and
with
everything
him.
was a lie.
But
yeah.
they didn't sleep in the same bed. They didn't. It was more real cordial.
Mm-hmm.
I read that.
Yeah, and again, I'm not sure. She may have never slept with anybody. I mean, she would say that she did sometimes, and then other times she didn't. You know, like she would say she was a virgin. So I have no idea.
Autopsy wasn't able to determine that for
But
sure.
what we do know is that on August 20th, both he and Beth registered as husband and wife at the Brevoort Apartments on Lexington Avenue in Hollywood, and they lived there for 7 days. They split up, and Beth moved to the Hawthorne Hotel. She lived there from August 28th until September 20th. She lived with a friend from Cambridge, Massachusetts, that had come down. She had bumped into her, actually.
It's interesting. She's lived all these places and no record. She didn't pay rent. I mean, she just
She didn't pay,
didn't work.
And you know what I thought was interesting is she dressed well. Like,
Well,
how
that's
did
true,
she get
too.
her clothes? I mean, where was she getting money? Unless people were just getting them from her. Like, she wasn't.
She wasn't a prostitute.
No, she was not a
No,
prostitute.
She wasn't a prostitute.
It's just interesting that she dressed so well, you know, for not having any money. Okay. So she bumps into this friend from Cambridge and then another young lady who was a runaway and underage, and they did not get along. So the two moved to another room and found a new roommate, and then eventually all four left Hawthorne. Also during this time, Arthur Curtis James Jr. claimed to have sketched her and painted her over a 3-month period after meeting her in a cocktail lounge in Hollywood in August 1944. He was also known as Charles B. Smith, and he had been convicted of the Mann Act in November 1944 in Tucson, Arizona. So I'm like, what the heck
What's
is the
that?
Mann Act? And it's MANN. And the Mann Act is, quote, transportation of any woman for prostitution, debauchery, or any immoral act. So she's getting around people that are dangerous at this
and she
point.
wasn't a prostitute. at all.
No, she wasn't. But I don't know if she was actually sketched. That's the thing.
Well, they've not had proof of her being sketched or painting.
I mean, it's just such a fascinating case. Okay, so then here's what's happening. A pattern is developing where Beth would rely on friends and acquaintances to help her out. This continued until her death, and I believe contributed to a high-risk lifestyle, like we talked about
I
before,
agree.
because she's around a lot of strangers. She also told people that the lieutenant she was marrying was in a hospital in L.A., and she was hoping he would get released in time for the wedding in November, which was, again, not true.
Was anyone in the hospital at all?
No.
Nothing. She made the whole thing up. That's just amazing.
Is it not amazing?
Why she would do that and doesn't even have to.
That's what I'm saying. There were so many things that she lied about. She did not have to lie. So it's almost like she was building this fantasy life. It was so weird. And that's why I was irritated. I'm like, why are you saying that?
If
You
she
don't
ever
need
stayed
to.
in one place or even married, maybe she did have mental illness, or maybe she just was a liar. and
She might have
lied.
been. Yeah, she might have been. Some people just do it.
They do.
Okay, so from this point on of the story of Beth, we see a frequent moving from place to place to place until September 1946, when Sid Zaid took Beth and another friend of hers in, but his house was too small. So now we're getting into an important person in the story, and that is Mark Hansen. I'm sure you've heard of his name.
Yes.
Okay, so it's Sid Zaid that introduced her to Mark Hansen. He was a part owner of the nightclub Florentine Gardens and a major character in the story. Hansen agreed to take them in after Sid explained the situation. Both of them stayed there until October 10th. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of dates, but it's kind of like the timeline. After that, they stayed with random men they would meet.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to
And-
believe, though, that she wasn't into prostitute, even though we know she wasn't.
Yeah, she
or
wasn't.
that she did not have relations with some of them.
Yeah. And we've even got proof that she did not sleep with one guy that was having an affair with her, but she never slept with him. Yeah. And if you hear the dog barking, that's because there is a dog barking.
Right.
Okay. So after that, they stay with these random men. Reports of one stay by one of the men was that Beth would sleep on the sofa. And then during this time, both Marjorie, her friend from Massachusetts, and Beth, they went home.
Back to Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
But Beth would later return with an amateur photographer named Glenn Stearns. I mean, it's head spinning. It is so head
There's
spinning.
a lot of names and a lot of men to keep up with.
A lot of names,
and a lot of friends.
a lot of places,
a lot of
lot
lies,
of dates,
a lot.
and moving around. I mean, it's you'll never get it straight. But the point of this is just to show how transient her life was. Not saying she was homeless and that she was living on the streets and sleeping on park benches, but she was definitely living a high-risk lifestyle. And again, back then, you probably would never think you'd be murdered. I mean, it was so innocent.
Not in the 40s.
Yeah.
Well, she actually was skilled. I mean, didn't have to spend a dime.
Yeah.
Roof over her head, nice clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But dangerous.
Now, when we get to, and I get confused again, because Glenn said that he met Beth on Hollywood Boulevard in 1946, but some reports say that she returned to California with him from Massachusetts. So I don't know. I'm not sure which.
Well,
But-
we know she ended up back there.
Yeah, she definitely ended back, but
So-
where she met him, I'm not sure.
What year did she end back?
At this time, it's 1946. So she's
So he may have taken her back.
He might have, yeah. Now, Stearns said that Beth was a good subject for photographs because she was striking, which I completely agree. He contacted the police after learning she was the victim and brought the photos he had taken of her around October 22nd, 1945 at Marshall High School, which I think that is in Massachusetts, but I'm not sure. I didn't know if it was in LA or Massachusetts. He then drove her to the Guardian Arms Apartments and picked up her luggage. Well, it'd have to be California because he then drove her out to San Fernando Valley where she hoped to find a place to stay, but she couldn't. So he took her back to Mark Hansen's home where her friend Ann Toth lived there and let her back in. Now, there's a whole story behind that, which we'll
She
get
lived
into.
with Mark, the friend.
Off and on. So she was kicked out, which I'll get into in a second.
Right.
And then she's trying to find a place to stay. She can't find a place to stay. So Anne lets her back into the apartment, really against Mark Hansen's, wishes. He didn't want her there, and she ended up getting kicked out again.
What was the reason? Do you know?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Okay. So she ends up back at his house, and she was there until Anne found a place for her and even paid her rent on November 13th. Beth stayed at that location, which was the Chancellor, until December 6th. And now we're getting closer to her murder. Okay, so the Chancellor was in a bad part of town. So it was not safe for a young girl. When Beth left that place,
yeah.
crazy.
Man, she's left. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah. She ended up in the Bay Area to spend, she told friends she was going to the Bay Area to spend Christmas with her sister, Virginia. So her sister did live in the Bay Area, okay? So that is true.
So some of her sisters, or just the one was in California?
Yeah, one of them was in California, Virginia.
I wonder if she kept up with him, if she was close to him.
It doesn't sound like it. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, she'd write her mom home, but how close could you be when back then, telephones
Because the
were
books
really
don't really mention the family much at all.
Yeah, I was surprised at what I learned about the family. I didn't know that her dad did that, and
It's crazy.
It definitely answered some questions for me. Okay, so she never went to her sister's. She lied again, and I'm not sure why. Instead, she went south to San Diego. Investigators learned that she was picked up the same evening of December 6th by a Carl Balsiger. Balsiger took her on a business trip to Camarillo. They returned later with another passenger, Walter Thatcher, the next day, and they drove through Reseda and the West San Fernando Valley, ending up back in Hollywood. Balsiger said that he found a room for Beth that evening, but investigators were not able to verify his claim. He then said that he dropped her off at the bus station the next day. Beth told Bossiger that she was going to go to Berkeley to see her sister. Another lie.
So she ends up with two men.
Strangers.
Well, see.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy. It is. There's so many suspects, but I don't think that actually any of these men did it.
You don't?
No. And we'll get into why, because it's too sophisticated.
I mean, two men, though. Mm-hmm. And you're not sleeping with them.
No.
And they willing to help her.
And, like, let me show you.
That's just amazing.
So, and I've got a reason for those weird pieces of art, but that's her arrest record.
Mm-hmm.
She's so pretty. You know, the eyes. And then that's a police bulletin that came out when she went missing. And then they found these things. Like, here's a picture of her with a man.
And they look.
Here's a picture
and
of
look
her
how
with a
she
man.
holds his hand. It looks like they're involved.
And he's military, obviously. I don't know about this guy. But they found these pictures and they don't know who they are.
Oh.
Which is interesting how they got a hold of them, actually.
Where'd they find them?
If I'm not mistaken, they were mailed by the killer.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's interesting.
How would the killer get them?
Wait, they were in her purse.
Oh, in her purse.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say I didn't read anything that.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about.
Would have went to her place of where she lived or anything.
Yeah, I didn't.
So it was in her purse.
Yeah, I didn't even know the killer mailed stuff to people. I had no idea about that. Okay, so again, another lie. And she went back to San Diego, and she bought a ticket to an all-night theater, and she became friends with Dorothy French, the cashier. Dorothy invited her to stay at her home with her mother and brother for a few days, but Beth ended up staying an entire month, which the French family did not anticipate, nor did they appreciate at all.
Oh, it's amazing to me how she can find places and people that want to take her in.
Right.
She must have an innocence about her,
that's
too.
what that one person said, that she was very innocent and shy. So I think people felt sorry for her.
Right.
She left on January 8th, and they stated that she met and dated men and went dancing and dining with new acquaintances when she lived with them. One was an unidentified naval officer, and another was a married man, Robert Red Manley. Red was his nickname. He was the last known person to spend considerable time with her, and he was a big suspect at first.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember
yes, I do.
So she asked Red to take her to L.A. after they saw each other several times, which he did. He then drove her to the Biltmore in L.A. on January 9th, 1947. He left her in the lobby. When her body was found 6 days later, he became one of the prime suspects, but he was cleared.
It's just amazing to me. I hate going back and forth to this, but no relationships with anybody. You're having an affair with a married... I mean,
but,
what man... Of course, they were more gentlemen back then. Would take her all over the place.
Right.
Buy her clothes, give her places to stay.
Yeah.
With nothing in return.
Yeah. Well, and I guess she wasn't very pleasant either. And he mentions that. Like, he didn't like being with her. Yeah, but was he like... From what some people say, they never slept together. And that may have made him mad. And that's why he, said some of the things he said. But I don't know. I think she was extremely sad.
Oh,
I do.
Yeah.
I think she was a very sad person.
Rejection after rejection after rejection.
Maybe, or just she's sad in general, and her life
is
sad. And
that's true.
That may be why she lied about having these fiancés and these different people and getting married, because, that was her dream. So it's just an interesting deal. But again,
and you know what's interesting? No one really knows her well enough to explain a lot about her and her actions.
No.
Her friends, her parent, nobody.
Yeah.
That's sort of interesting too.
Yeah, even her own family, like they thought she was working. She was building a life in LA. No, she was just running around from house to house, couch to couch. If they would have known, I'm sure they would have done something about it, but they had no idea because she would literally lie in her letters to her family. Okay. Now, obviously not living back in that day,
Right.
It's
Me either.
It's hard for me to grasp her need to bounce from location to location by choice. It's like it was by choice. But she wasn't doing drugs.
No.
She preferred soda over alcohol. So even though she'd be in bars, she would drink soda. And she seemed like a nice girl who did lie compulsively.
Yeah, not a bar hop.
Yeah.
Or a prostitute. Sit in the bars back then. And
it's so weird.
That is very strange behavior to me.
And she might have had her reasons, but we don't know because like you said, she's like the best not well-known victim
no one
there
knows.
is.
Even people around her.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And, maybe she was chasing a future. I don't know. There's no record, again, that she ever auditioned or pursued an acting career. She sounds like really a very immature girl that didn't grasp the danger that she was in. And, of course, the 40s were a very innocent time. Now, how did she get her name? My stuff. Here we go. Okay, so in 1946, a new style of movie making was introduced called film noir or dark film. It was a excuse me. Excuse me. Goodness. It was a genre of movie making that included cynical heroes, stark lighting, flashbacks, intricate plots, and existentialists.
Well, I'm not sure what that
Plots.
is.
Existentialist.
Yeah.
Which basically, let me sum it up for you. Life sucks, so why keep on living?
Right.
Basically, is what that means.
Those kind of movies.
Because there's no home for happiness.
Right.
And so one of those films was The Blue Dahlia. And it held personal meaning for Elizabeth. Like, she watched it and really liked that movie. And if I'm not mistaken, she watched it over and over.
Did you ever try to look it up and see if you could watch the movie?
No, that's a good idea.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It's got to be around.
It'd have to be.
Because this case is so big.
Well, I think was it Casablanca during that time? There were,
which was a great movie.
Yeah, and it was stark. The hero was troubled, right? So that's a good example of that. She lived in a time of war, which is probably why film noir was there.
We should look that up later.
Yeah, and see if it's still around. The annual income at the time was like $2,390 a year.
Wow.
A house cost like $5,600 and a new car was $1,200. And a postage stamp, I found out, was like 3 cents.
I'm surprised it was that high.
Right. And then coffee, as usual, is the most expensive at 70. It's still the most expensive to this day. And you could buy a movie ticket for a nickel. You could also make a phone call for a nickel. You could buy a cup of coffee for a nickel. Public transportation was also a nickel. So it didn't take much for her probably to live on. And I'm sure she, would go to the movies a lot. It sounds like she did, actually, from what I found out.
I had read that she did. She loved the movies.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother her to go by herself.
Yeah, she would go by herself. She met lots of people. She caught the attention of a lot of servicemen. She'd go dancing to the beach, restaurants, and clubs. She was a regular at CBS radio studios on Sunset near Vine. But
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she would go there. And so, it's almost like a carefree life, and yet maybe it was like the movies.
Wonder why she was
like
at the studios.
She loved going there and listening to the radio shows when they were broadcast them. Yeah. So it's just interesting. It's a very like she would have fun doing these things, and then also she had no place to live.
But she was young too.
She would go to the bars, but not drink. She would date lots of men, but not sleep around.
Wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's definitely
the
just an
opposite of everything
victim
that connects
Yes.
together.
Yes.
It doesn't connect together.
No, it doesn't. Now, during this time, before she was murdered, she was kicked out of the Hansons. So remember Mark Hansen? She was kicked out of his house for getting into an argument with another girl that was living there and who was dating Hansen. And it appears that the other girl was actually the instigator, not Beth. Hansen, I guess, opened up his home to young girls to live there.
Interesting.
And there seems to be maybe a little bit of shadiness.
Creepiness, you
going
mean?
on. Mm-hmm. So I guess Beth lied about making a long-distance phone call that she made, and then she left him to pay the bill. And she also lied about making the phone call, saying she didn't.
I mean, like, how much could the bill be?
I have no idea.
In the 40s.
But Hansen swears that he was never interested in Beth. But Ann Toth, her friend and others, says that he was infatuated with her. And that they never slept together. Hansen was known for, again, hosting these young aspiring actresses down on their luck. And there were accusations of favors exchanged for those services, but not with Beth. Ann said that Beth was the one girl never approached by Hansen because he thought Beth was a virgin, which she led him to believe, according to Ann. But that might have been a lie as well.
Well, we don't know, really, if she was or not.
Yeah. And then Ann said that Hansen and Beth were going together at first. So this is her friend that paid for her rent at the Chancellor. So she said they were going together at first, but Beth thinks that she wanted him to think that, and that the two fought as well. So, for example, she cleaned up his bathroom for him and threw out some stuff, and that angered him. And she said, quote, he got awful damn mad for about a week. Plus, Beth stole his black book that ended up in her possession and was found after her death, along with the long-distance phone call, unsavory characters, it's crazy. And then Ann also thought that Beth was afraid of Hansen. So he was a suspect as well. I don't think he did it.
No. He might like young women, but that's not.
And again,
make
the
him
crime, and I'll get into this, but the crime took a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
So then when I say sophisticated, that's what I mean. It was very methodical,
and
it was well thought out, if that makes sense. And it wasn't a slash, murder.
Right.
It was very methodical.
And to do all that and clean her like they did, there would be blood somewhere.
Yes,
and they didn't have any at his house.
Her blood was drained from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any at his house.
So to finish up on this episode, when Beth was at Mark Hansen's, men visited all the time. Again, Leo Himes was one of them. A guy named Marvin Margolis, I guess is how you would say his name. A man that Beth said was her cousin, but wasn't.
Oh, my gosh.
You see what I mean? It's
I don't understand all the lies over and over. Ones that don't even matter.
Right.
Maybe it's to protect her. That's my cousin. People might leave me alone.
Some of them I could see that.
Right.
Just because she was by herself. Now, Margolis was eyed as a suspect even as late as 1949. He was interrogated, but there was nothing to tie him to the crime. I believe the reason he was looked at so close is because he was a medical student, and the nature of the crime caused many to believe the killer had to have some medical knowledge.
I think that too.
Ironically, get this, we're going to end with this. Mark Hansen was shot in 1949. Lola Titus shot him while he was shaving in his bathroom because he was, quote, either going to love me, marry me, and take care of me, or I was going to kill him.
Wow.
His lung was pierced by the bullet, and his heart was missed by 0.7 of an inch. That gave investigators a reason to search Mark Hansen's home, in 1949. So this is, years after she was murdered, because he was a suspect, but they did not find any evidence. They did find 2 pictures of Beth. They also, puppy. They also bugged his home. But
2 pictures? Mm-hmm. He kept 2 pictures of her.
And then they bugged his home, but nothing. So what had happened is Mark had separated from his wife and children at the time, and he rented his home to these young girls. And then in July of 1949, he moved back home to his family. Mark and Ann Toth kept in touch for years after Beth's murder.
Wow.
So, again,
I don't think he did it either, though.
I don't think any of these people did it, because now again, we don't know much about them either, but I don't. There's a specific kind of killer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And a sexual sadist type of killer. So
with medical knowledge,
maybe, yeah. I think definitely had to have some knowledge, at least of anatomy, to know where to cut the body.
Yeah, or he would have had more damage to the body.
Yes.
I mean, everything was just clean.
And even the stuff he did to her post-death, and when I say special kind of killer, I don't mean special as in, they're highly intelligent or anything like that. No. I just mean it's a sexual sadist type of killer, and what he did to her was to humiliate her forever.
It was horrible.
It was.
But then you think, today you would think he really, really knew her, or to humiliate her like that.
Yeah.
Like she turned him down for some reason.
Because a lot of sexual sadists, I do think that some of the stuff maybe could have been like intense anger. But with a sexual sadist, they enjoy seeing the fear and the torture. That's very important. That's actually what gets them off more, is the torture of the victim and the fear they cause, not necessarily the sex act. Some of them never have sex actually with the victim. So I'm not sure it has to be someone that knows her, because a sexual sadist is, to me, someone that could do what they did to her and not know her. They'd be a stranger on stranger.
Someone that violent, though, if you talk to his friends or old girlfriends, any of those men, there'd be flags somewhere.
Yes.
Right?
But
there'd
again,
have to be.
Identifying the viable suspect.
But everyone they picked, I'm sure they did. They checked old past girlfriends, wives.
Yes. But your idea that it might have been someone that knew her is very viable, which we'll get into when we discuss the suspect.
Because
that
it
is
was
very
so personal
interesting
to humiliate her. That's why I assume that. Don't know, but
a sexual sadist and then showing off his work and all that. Like, there's definitely some psychology behind the killer for sure. So,
wonder if there might have been two.
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I think it was one.
I read somewhere, or one of the podcasts, the ones I listen to. That
is that what you do with podcasts? Is you listen?
Well, yeah. Well, I was just saying that as the one the one I listen to most of the time.
Is it True Crime Garage?
Yeah, True Crime Garage. That's excellent.
I'm going through every single one. I'm like on episode 189.
I am too.
May have like 500.
I am too, and I skipped to the recent ones. I had to.
No.
But they said that there was proof of some kind that she had been moved somewhere. Her pose she'd been reposed. I don't know how they know that.
I don't either.
Yeah, you have to listen to it. It's really interesting.
I did. I don't remember that.
You don't remember
I'll have to go back.
Maybe it was a book.
I don't remember that.
That something was off on the body, like.
Well, the fact.
Well, yeah. I mean, but other than that, like she had been reposed, like,
and all that.
I might be thinking of something else, but the way her body was, something. I don't know why I said that, because I'm not even sure of all the facts, but something about when you stiffen up.
Yes.
After time you loosen.
Okay, so like the rigor mortis, and then the blood settles.
Yeah.
So that maybe. Oh, I know what you're thinking. That she died somewhere else and was there for a while. And then when she was posed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I have heard that.
That's what I wanted to say. It just wasn't
some of
coming
us
out.
just have the
Must
touch.
be that Manhattan.
We only had a sip before you had
that
this.
Was enough. That really burned
face.
My throat.
I told everybody, did I not say that she's a wimp when it comes to.
Well, you didn't
drinks.
Like it. You almost. Got sick. It looked like.
Let's make sure.
You made a face.
I did not.
We have it on
get
tape.
Sick. No, it's definitely shocking, right? So you take the drink, you're like, wow. Kind of get you in the throat.
Could you imagine back then you had such strong drinks?
Burns
It
down
did burn
as it goes, right? But no, actually the taste is very pleasant.
No.
Yes, it is.
Wasn't.
Take me at my word.
Don't try it.
No, try it. It's good. Outline of a Murder is a Mr. Joseph production. What do you think, Joseph?